Hi, I'm Jun Yen. I'm the Executive Director of the Singapore Mediation Centre, which is the biggest and most established mediation centre in Singapore, and we've been around for about 23 years. SMC administers mediations and adjudications. We have about 450 mediations every year and about 500 adjudications. These are different types of dispute resolution processes. Parties will come and they will file the case with us, and in most cases in fact, we would be appointing a mediator or adjudicator, as the case may be, who is appropriate for the case. But in some cases, for mediations, the parties would request a particular mediator because they have some prior experience with this person, or they have heard of this person's reputation and they feel that this person is appropriate for their case. So in those cases, we will facilitate the appointment, but in all other respects, we will run the case from start to finish to ensure that the mediation or the adjudication takes place and is conducted appropriately. When you pick SMC as a mediation centre, you get something which is actually not found in any other institution in Singapore, which is you actually have a proper registry team that will assist in the administration of the case from start to finish. From the point where the parties and the respondents are contacted, to any kind of request that they may have regarding the nature of the case and how it's to be conducted, any details regarding the type of mediator they prefer, such as a particular language that they need, or a particular piece of expertise that the mediator must have, all the way to the conduct of the case, setting up the rooms, equipping it with all the necessary equipment that is necessary for the mediation, including Zoom or online mediations, and then all the way to the end where the settlement agreement is drafted, it's lodged in court as a court order. All these processes, SMC is a full-service institution that we can do, and it's something that's not that commonly found in Singapore. Most of our cases actually get started in the court first, and then it gets stayed, and then they come for mediation, rather than they try mediation and it fails, then they go over to the court. Usually they do it in parallel. We have not seen many cases where parties try to mediate and fail and then start a court action. They usually try to do it in parallel. In terms of whether this trend will change, it will definitely change because first of all, there's a growing awareness among parties about the effects of mediation, how powerful it is as a tool for certain kinds of disputes, and how much time and money can be saved. I think there's also a greater sense among parties that the other side is also increasingly amenable to mediation. Sometimes they lodge the case in court because they don't really think the other side will go into a mediation in good faith. I think increasingly when parties have the confidence that the other side will take mediation seriously to look for an outcome that is satisfactory, they might not start the court case first. They may just go ahead and try mediation. And I think we're starting to see an upward trend in that direction, even though the majority of cases still go to court and lodge at the same time as the mediation is started. Well, the Singapore Convention on Mediation has been a big boost to everyone in the mediation arena, SMC included, simply because it has raised mediation to a different level of visibility among all parties, not just international players, but even Singapore, where I think there's still a lot of people who are still not familiar enough with mediation as a process. And the fact that there was an international convention, there was a big signing ceremony, the Prime Minister was there, lots of heads of states came by as well. I think that made people sit up and take notice and say, hey, what is this? What is this that everyone is talking about? I've never heard of this. How does it differ from going to court? How does it differ from arbitration that we're familiar with? So I think that everyone in the mediation industry got a big boost. So I think the convention has done fantastic things for us, even if it's not necessarily a cross-border case that you're involved in. In 10 years' time, I'm actually hopeful, very hopeful, that the mediation scene will be very vibrant because mediation as a skill is actually a very useful skill in many walks of life. I don't think it's limited to just a commercial process, unlike, say, litigation and arbitration, where there are only certain kinds of disputes that really work well for an arbitration case, or you can justify the cost of these processes. But mediation spans a wide spectrum. It goes into family cases, it can be small disputes, it can be things from employment, medical, or it can be your huge commercial cases, complex medical cases. We've had big insolvency cases, which are like restructuring and so on. So all these are where mediation really shines. In fact, interestingly enough, the more complicated your case is, the more likely mediation is the best course of options for you, because you have the chance to think of very creative solutions that a court cannot provide. Whereas, when you go to court and you sue someone or you go for arbitration, the list of remedies that they can give you is quite limited. So I actually think that as parties become more aware of these advantages, as they've used mediation more and more and find that it works for them and the outcome is superior to what they could have gotten elsewhere, I think more and more people are just going to adopt mediation. They're going to put them in their contracts as clauses. They're going to offer it as a first option when they have a dispute. They're going to be less resistant when the other side asks for mediation. They themselves are going to be interested in becoming mediators. So I actually think that this the mediation scene is going to really take off. In 10 years' time, it will look nothing like we see today. In terms of the standard-setting bodies, both locally and internationally, I think it's very important that there is some sense of what is the level of competency that mediators are expected to reach for different arenas. I think we need to recognize that depending on the kind of disputes you take, there are different skills involved. For example, if you're handling family disputes and you're mediating between spouses that are divorcing, and it involves matters like children, I think you need a certain kind of skills that are not required for a commercial dispute. And I think that somehow must be built into a standards regime for people to be say, okay, you're qualified in this, but for this you need a bit more training and so on and so forth. So a standard-setting body would be very critical in ensuring that the benchmarks are met. It's just like when you have a profession like, say, lawyers or doctors, there are standards required because you're selling a service to the public, and because of the information gap, the public can't tell whether you're a good lawyer or a good doctor until you've sort of messed up their case. So to protect the people who are clients and users, that's what the role of standards are, and it doesn't just apply to these professional areas, it applies to mediation as well. I was the CEO of Maxwell Chambers for a season. After 5 years, I went on to develop and run an art center for a year, and then I went off to write books. So I've actually had a few itches that I went to scratch before finally circling back to the dispute resolution arena, which started work in the Ministry of Law doing ADR work. So for me, coming to SMC wasn't really a stretch. It was sort of returning to something I'd been doing all along. I would encourage them to be bold. I would encourage them to not be hung up when they make mistakes, to not feel as though because of their age or inexperience that they're not capable of coming up with great arguments, great ideas, great ways of doing things. They should be open-minded to learn, not just from people who have walked before them, but even among their peers. Because sometimes simply coming from a different culture, different country, there's a lot to learn from each other. And so I would say, be like a sponge. During this competition where you see students from all over the world, just listen, learn, have an open mind, recognize that there may be several ways to do the same thing and all are equally good. Not to be fixed on a particular way of winning, and in fact not even to look at winning as the ultimate outcome, even though that's of course what everyone joins a competition for, but really to see what you can learn from and how you can benefit from being part of this experience and to come away being a much better mediator than when they first started.